Today seems like a drive down memory lane. I still remember the time when a couple of friends and we got our driving licenses and we borrowed our father's cars and drove up the hills. All were three different kinds of cars. But that didn't really matter. What really mattered was the feeling of being grown up. We had grown some fur on top of our lips and we had just got our driving licenses, and those were like the entry tickets into the world of four-wheelers. Today feels similar. We are driving three completely different cars, and each and every one of them is an entry ticket into the world of luxury automobiles. An A-Class, a 1 Series and the A3. Three cars that have the responsibility of wooing new customers to German luxury. Ironically though, these are compact cars. The A3 is the newest of the lot, and that sedan form factor is what gives it an instant upper hand over the hatchbacks. To the uninitiated, it can pass off as an A4, and that isn't a bad thing. But look closely and you will agree with me that the A3 looks a lot more athletic with its tighter lines, sleeker profile and a hunkered down stance. The prominent lines and the 17-inch wheels work in its favor by making the A3 look much larger than what it is. It looks like a typical Audi, but the 1 Series, that doesn't look like a BMW. It has the kidney grille and the Hofmeister kink. That is where the commonality with other Beamers ends. The front is meh. The flat rear, the long nose and the side profile make it look like a station wagon based on a roadster. The only saving grace is the M bodywork. But when it comes to a sporty stance, there is very little that these cars can do against the A-Class. It shuns the Mercedes-Benz legacy of being overtly elegant. Instead, it is low-slung, wide, aggressive and has the right amount of bling thanks to the diamond grip. The A-Class was penned by the same man who designed the SLS AMG, and the result has clearly paid off. So much so that it may turn you into a narcissist. But while the exteriors are for the outside world to know that you have arrived, it is the cabin that needs to appeal to you. And that is where things could get a little disappointing. These cars aren't very spacious, nor is their equipment anything like their bigger siblings. They're equipped with features like cruise control, climate control, automatic headlamps and wipers, fuel and trip computers and rear center armrests. And if you are willing to spend more, you will get options like leather upholstery, panoramic sunroof, xenon headlamps, LED DRLs, rear seat entertainment, etc. All these cars come with their custom infotainment systems as well. Audi's multimedia interface has a good layout, the screen is retractable and gets a touchpad input interface too. The navigation module is well sorted, but the media unit is quite inconsistent when displaying album art. Merc's tablet-style display is quirky, and the version of command infotainment it ships with isn't as feature-rich as the one in the new C-Class. It also doubles up as a display for the reversing camera. But speaking of party pieces, BMW's iDrive comes up with some really cool stuff with its vehicle data and efficient dynamics displays. The stack UI is also the easiest to use. The A3's cabin is very similar to any other Audi, and that has its pros and cons. Cons are that it looks as dated as the A4's cabin, and the good part is that it is every bit as premium as an Audi should be. The A-Class on the other hand doesn't feel as rich as its elder siblings, more so now with the entry of the C-Class. The 1 Series has the best looking interior of the lot. It's solid, sporty and very well put together. The driver-oriented design of the dashboard is the icing on the cake. Out of these three cars, the BMW 1 Series is the most exciting one to drive. And it's not about the amount of power that it produces, but the way it drives. The steering setup, it's just so precise, it feels so direct. You know exactly what is happening in each and every corner of the car. You can feel what each and every tire is doing. That is how direct it is. If you want to relive your college days, want to have fun with your drive, the 1 Series is what you need to go for. It's got a rear wheel drive configuration, so you know what I'm talking about. Point it towards the corner and step on the throttle when you're exiting. If that is not good enough, shift to Sport Plus mode, traction control is off, and tail comes out. The 1 Series is stiffly sprung too, so despite the tail wagging, the car doesn't get into any awkward body roll. Modulate the throttle properly and the 1 Series will reward you with point-and-shoot dynamics around bends. It also gets a sorted 8-speed gearbox that may not be as quick as Audi's unit, and is certainly not as confused either. It knows when to hold the revs and when to let go. Engine braking could have been better though. The BMW's engine has a strong acceleration and a very good mid-range, but the engine starts to feel relatively sluggish and noisy at higher revs. The A3 is comparatively calmer. Audi has managed to get a really nice suspension setup for the India spec A3. Now it's tuned for the Indian conditions pretty well. If you're driving over broken surfaces like I am right now, you will like the way it absorbs all those bumps. But that said, if it's a series of bumps, the initial few bumps are absorbed quite nicely, but the next one, you feel that the rebound is a little too stiff. And that is where you feel that the vehicle starts jumping over the next series of bumps or ruts. But then again, it doesn't give you that floaty feeling that you had inside the A4. So while it absorbs all these bumps quite well, around the bends or at highway speeds, the vehicle feels quite stable. It doesn't have that wallowy feeling to it. What I'm not too happy about is the steering setup. It feels a little vague, it lacks a little bit of feedback. The Beamer does a much better job at this. The steering feel is quite light at city speeds, it weighs up quite well at highway speeds, but then it just doesn't feel as direct. And this being a front wheel drive car, you have that inherent understeer that a front wheel drive mechanism will always have. So when you're pushing the car around bends, you want that feedback, and that is something that lacks in the A3. If you're looking at buying the A3 as a city commuter, then I think you will fall in love with the steering setup because it feels very light and convenient. But while the A3 is too soft and the Beamer too stiff, the A-Class hits the sweet spot. Though technically the BMW 1 Series is the sportiest car in this Comparo, the A-Class is what really makes you feel like you're driving a tiny little sports car. Because you have these nice racing buckets, all these SLC-AMG inspired design on the center console and the AC vents. And you also have paddle shifters, so when you're actually pushing the car around twisties, it comes in handy because you don't need to get your hand off the steering wheel. Unfortunately, that can't be said about the BMW 1 Series or even the Audi A3 for that matter. And considering that both those cars are more expensive than the A-Class, I think they should have definitely given a pair of paddle shifters here. But that said, the 7-speed dual clutch transmission doesn't feel as quick as the one in the Audi. In fact, it feels a little too sluggish compared to the other two cars. The A-Class more than makes up for all these little niggles because the steering setup, it is quite precise. It's certainly not as direct as the BMW, but it doesn't feel as vague as the Audi either. And at city speeds, it is quite light and convenient. So I think Mercedes has achieved the perfect balance here. While the A3 and the 1 Series have 2-litre engines producing an identical 143 PS of power and 320 Nm of torque, the Merc's larger 2.2-litre unit puts out only 109 PS and 250 Nm. The deficit is only highlighted on the highway though, where the engine needs to work a tad harder for the overtakes and inclines. Both the 1 Series and the A-Class come with driving modes as well. While the sports modes allow the gearbox to hold the revs longer and make the throttle more responsive, the Eco modes activate the start-stop mechanism and optimize the throttle maps and air conditioning for better fuel saving. The A-Class until now was too stiff and a big no-no for the Indian road conditions. But now it gets a softer setup that is still good around the bends but more forgiving on our roads. It has become a nicer car to drive overall, and though it doesn't have as much kit as the A3 or the 1 Series, its relatively lesser price point makes it come across as a value product. But value alone is not enough to sum this up. Now, if you're a sensible buyer, then the Jetta should be good enough for you. And if you want to stretch your legs further, then the Passat or the Superb is where you would want to draw the line. But it's very difficult to escape the charm of these luxury brands. They all are very different cars, but they all have one common thing, the entry-level price point. So that is what adds to the confusion on which one to buy. So let me make it simple for you. The Audi A3 is the most practical car here. It's big, it looks big, has a boot, is a sedan, is kitted out quite well, and has a very efficient engine. But if it's pure performance that you seek, then the BMW 1 Series, that is where you need to park your money on. Because it is not only the cheapest rear-wheel driven Beamer that you can buy, it's also the most fun car in this price point. But if you are the kind who wants to arrive in style and want your car to reflect the price tag, then the Mercedes-Benz A-Class, that is what tops the desirability list. And that very desire is what gives birth to luxury.